Number: The Harvest. Commander Vex Thor stood on the bridge of the Harvest vessel times Eternal Prophet *, watching the blue-green world rotate slowly below. He had overseen 43 planetary acquisitions in his career, and this one looked no different from the others. The scans showed a fragmented civilization, hundreds of separate governments, primitive nuclear technology, and no unified defense network. Perfect for harvesting. Begin collection operations, Vex Thor ordered. Standard protocol. Target the coastal population centers first. The Zenthari Dominion had perfected this process over 5,000 years. Their empire stretched across 300 worlds, built on the labor of countless enslaved species. Earth was simply the latest addition to their catalog. Category 7. Pre-FTL. Fragmented governance. Expected resistance. Minimal. The collection ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Each vessel was the size of a city block, equipped with gravitational nets designed to scoop up thousands of inhabitants at once. They appeared over Shanghai, Mumbai, New York, Lagos, and Sao Paulo simultaneously. Captain Sarah Chen was finishing her morning coffee in San Francisco when the sky darkened. She looked up through her apartment window and saw something that shouldn't exist. A massive ship, dark metal etched with glowing symbols, hovering above the bay. Then, the screaming started. The gravitational nets activated. People lifted off the ground, floating upward toward the ship's collection bays. Cars, buildings, everything not bolted down began to rise. Sarah grabbed her doorframe, watching in horror as her neighbors drifted skyward, their screams filling the air. Within the first hour, the Zenthari collected 5 million humans. Commander Vex Thor reviewed the intake reports with satisfaction. Excellent specimens. Strong bone structure. Adaptable biology. They'll fetch good prices at the labor markets. He had seen dozens of species react to collection. First came shock, then fear, then acceptance. It always followed the same pattern. But Earth didn't follow the pattern. Colonel Park Min-ji was in a meeting at South Korean military headquarters when the reports flooded in. Cities under attack. Massive ships. Mass abductions. Her first instinct was to think it was a drill or a mistake. Then she saw the satellite footage. "Get me every military commander on this planet," she ordered. "I don't care what country, what alliance, what politics. Get them all on a secure channel now." For the first time in human history, every major military power joined a single call. American generals sat in virtual meetings with Chinese commanders. Russian strategists coordinated with European defense ministers. Middle Eastern leaders shared intelligence with their oldest rivals. The divisions that had defined humanity for centuries vanished in an instant. They had a common enemy now. The Zenthari collection ships returned for a second harvest 12 hours later. This time, they found Earth ready. Fighter jets scrambled from every operational airbase. Naval vessels turned their missiles skyward. Artillery batteries that had been pointed at each other for decades rotated upward in unison. Commander Vex Thor barely noticed the first attacks. Primitive kinetic weapons and chemical explosives bounced harmlessly off his ship's shields. "Increase collection rate," he ordered. "Their resistance is adorable." Then the nuclear missiles launched. Pakistan fired first, followed by India, then Russia, China, the United States, France, the United Kingdom, and Israel. Weapons that had been designed to destroy each other's cities now flew toward a common target. The night sky lit up with dozens of nuclear detonations. The collection ship times, morning harvest times, was caught in the center of a coordinated strike. Its shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and standard plasma fire, had never been tested against sustained nuclear bombardment. The first warhead overloaded the forward generators. The second breached the hull. The third triggered a cascade failure in the ship's power core. The massive vessel broke apart over the Pacific Ocean, raining debris across thousands of miles. On the Times Eternal Prophet *, alarm klaxons wailed. Vex Thor stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "Impossible. They're Category 7. They don't have shield-penetrating weapons. Commander." They're using nuclear fission warheads in atmospheric detonation, his weapons officer reported. Our shields aren't calibrated for sustained kinetic thermal bombardment at these yield levels. Pull back all collection vessels, Vexthor ordered. Full fleet deployment. We need to pacify this world properly. But the damage was done. Humanity had tasted victory. One of the alien ships lay in pieces across the ocean floor, and human vessels were already racing to salvage the wreckage. Dr. James Okonkwo led the first research team to the crash site. What they found would change everything. Zenthari technology was advanced beyond human comprehension, but it followed physical laws that humans understood. Energy systems, propulsion mechanisms, computer networks, all of it could be reverse-engineered. We can learn from this, James told the Emergency United Nations Assembly. These ships use technology we've theorized about for decades. Plasma containment, gravitational manipulation, faster-than-light drives. It's all here. Colonel Park Min-ji addressed the same assembly an hour later. They'll come back with more ships and heavier weapons. We hurt them, and they're going to want revenge. But we've proven something today. We can fight them. We can win. In orbit, Commander Vex Thor composed his report to the Zenthari High Council. He had to explain how a primitive world had destroyed a harvest vessel, how a fragmented species with no spacefaring capability had coordinated a global defense, how everything they knew about Category 7 worlds was wrong. Recommend immediate military subjugation, he concluded. This species shows unprecedented unity and aggression. They must be broken quickly, before they become a larger problem. The High Council read his report with amusement. One lost ship? From a species that still used chemical rockets? They authorized a full battle fleet. 20 warships, each capable of orbital bombardment. Earth would be taught a lesson, but as the Zenthari fleet prepared to jump to Earth's system, they failed to consider one crucial detail. Humanity had already learned their first lesson about the galaxy. They were not alone, and they were not welcome. The Zenthari had given Earth something it had never truly had before, a reason to unite, and humanity, for all its flaws and divisions, had one trait that the Zenthari had never encountered in their 5,000 years of conquest. When pushed to the brink, when faced with extinction, when given no choice but to fight or die, humans didn't surrender. They got angry. The war had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Number. The Resistance. The Zenthari battle fleet arrived 3 weeks after the first harvest attempt. 20 warships materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system, each one large enough to be mistaken for a small moon. Fleet Commander Calvex reviewed the tactical data with cold efficiency. This would be a simple operation orbital bombardment, followed by ground occupation. The primitive humans would learn their place. Begin systematic destruction of military installations, Calvex ordered. Once their capacity to resist is eliminated, we'll proceed with pacification. The first bombardment struck Beijing at dawn. Energy beams cut through the atmosphere, turning military bases into glass craters. Moscow fell silent as plasma strikes obliterated air defense systems. Washington, D.C., burned as the Pentagon was reduced to rubble. The Zenthari fleet moved across the planet methodically, eliminating every military structure they could detect. In underground bunkers across the world, Colonel Park Min-ji watched the destruction with clenched fists. They had known this was coming. The scattered remains of Earth's military leadership had spent 3 weeks preparing, not for victory, but for survival. They think they're winning, she said to the other commanders on the secure channel. Let them think that. We've already evacuated our critical personnel and equipment. They're bombing empty buildings. The plan had been simple. Go underground. Every major military force had spent the 3 weeks since the first attack moving their operations into tunnels, caves, and hastily constructed bunkers. Weapons, vehicles, command centers, everything that mattered was already hidden beneath the surface. The Zenthari could burn the surface all they wanted. Humanity would fight from below, but hiding wasn't enough. They needed an advantage. Dr. James Okonkwo had barely slept since the first Zenthari ship crashed. His team of scientists from 20 nations worked around the clock in a converted salt mine in Germany, surrounded by pieces of alien technology. They had made breakthroughs that should have taken decades. The energy shields operate on a rotating frequency, James explained to the military commanders via video link. They're designed to deflect energy weapons, which is why our missiles got through. They weren't calibrated for kinetic impacts. But I think we can do better. He held up a small device, barely larger than a smartphone. This is a Zenthari power cell. It generates more energy than a nuclear reactor, and it's small enough to fit in a backpack. We can't manufacture them yet, but we can use the ones we salvaged. We're already installing them in our fighters and tanks. The second breakthrough came from a team in Taiwan. They had cracked the basics of the Zenthari FTL drive. It's not perfect, lead engineer Chen Wei admitted. Our ships will be slower and less stable than theirs. But we can reach orbit, and we can jump to nearby star systems. We're not trapped on Earth anymore. Leadedly Mark. Leadedly Mark. Commander Calvex received reports of increased human activity underground but dismissed them. Burrowing into holes was what prey did before dying. He ordered landing forces to begin ground operations. Zenthari soldiers would sweep the tunnels and round up the remaining humans for processing. The first ground assault targeted the Australian outback, where thermal scans showed large underground complexes. The Zenthari deployed 1,000 soldiers, expecting frightened refugees. Instead, they found something else. Lieutenant Sofia Reyes crouched in the darkness of the tunnel, listening to the heavy footsteps above. Her unit, a mix of Australian, Indonesian, and American soldiers, waited in silence. They had been trained for conventional warfare, but those rules no longer applied. This was guerrilla fighting taken to an extreme. Wait for them to spread out, she whispered into her radio. Then hit them from every direction. The Zenthari soldiers entered the tunnel system cautiously. Their armor was sophisticated, their weapons powerful, but the tunnels were tight, dark, and filled with traps. Explosives buried in walls, collapsed passages that funneled invaders into kill zones. Human soldiers who knew every inch of their terrain. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 700 Zenthari soldiers were dead. The humans had lost 31. Reports from similar engagements flooded into the Zenthari command ship. Ground forces were taking unexpected casualties. The humans fought with tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare: ambushes, traps, poison gas in confined spaces, attacks that showed complete disregard for their own casualties if it meant killing more Zenthari. They fight like animals, one Zenthari commander reported. They have no honor, but it was working. Every ground assault bogged down in brutal close-quarters combat. Every Zenthari victory cost far more than expected. The real surprise came 4 months into the invasion. Humanity launched its first counterattack in space. The ships were ugly, cobbled together from salvaged Zenthari technology and human engineering. Freighters and cargo vessels retrofitted with alien power cores and makeshift weapons. They shouldn't have been able to reach orbit, much less fight. The Times Defiance Asterisk, formerly a Chinese cargo hauler, led the assault. Captain Liu Zhang gripped the armrests of his chair as the jury-rigged FTL drive engaged. The ship lurched, reality twisted, and suddenly they were in the midst of the Zenthari fleet. All ships, fire at will, Liu ordered. Remember, we're not trying to win. We're trying to hurt them. The human ships spread out, targeting the Zenthari supply vessels and support craft rather than the main warships. They used ramming tactics, suicide runs, anything that would damage the enemy. The Zenthari were shocked by the ferocity of the assault. 3 supply ships were destroyed before the humans retreated back to Earth. Commander Calvex reviewed the battle reports in stunned silence. They achieved orbital capability in 4 months. That's impossible. Most species take decades to develop FTL technology. His tactical officer spoke quietly. Sir, They're not developing it. They're stealing it. Every ship we lose, every soldier killed, they take our technology and use it against us. They're learning faster than any species we've encountered. On Earth, the war had become a stalemate. The Xanthari controlled the surface and orbital space, but they couldn't root humanity out of the underground networks. Humans couldn't defeat the Xanthari fleet, but they could make every victory painful and expensive. Colonel Park Minji addressed Earth's scattered military leadership from a bunker somewhere in South America. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're buying time. Every day we hold out, we get stronger. Every Xanthari soldier we kill, every ship we damage, we learn more. Dr. James Okonkwo appeared on screen next. We've made progress on manufacturing our own plasma weapons. We've figured out their communication protocols. We're 6 months away from building our first true warship, not a retrofitted cargo ship, but a vessel designed from the ground up to fight. But the toll was devastating. Millions had died in the bombardments. Entire cities lay in ruins. Captured humans were still being shipped off-world to Xanthari slave markets. Earth was bleeding, and everyone knew they couldn't sustain this forever. That's when the messages started arriving. They came from the edges of Xanthari space, encrypted transmissions in languages humans had never heard. Other enslaved species, watching humanity's resistance with desperate hope. The messages were simple. You're not alone. Keep fighting. We'll help however we can. One message included detailed schematics of Xanthari warship weaknesses. Another contained star charts showing slave processing centers. A third revealed the location of Xanthari military supply lines. The galaxy was watching humanity's war. And for the first time in 5,000 years, the Xanthari Empire's slaves were daring to believe that resistance was possible. Colonel Park looked at the incoming messages, then at her fellow commanders. They came to Earth, expecting an easy harvest. Instead, they got a war. Now, it's time to take this war to them. The resistance was about to become an offensive. Number. The turning. 2 years into the war, humanity launched its first true offensive. The fleet wasn't impressive by Xanthari standards. 15 warships built from salvaged technology, 30 retrofitted cargo vessels, and 50 smaller strike craft. But it represented something the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia. A slave species fighting back with stolen weapons. Admiral Park Minji stood on the bridge of the Time's indomitable Asterisk, Earth's first purpose-built warship. Around her, crew members from 40 different nations worked in harmony. Korean engineers, Brazilian pilots, Nigerian weapons officers, German navigators. The divisions that had once defined humanity were forgotten. Target locked, reported Lieutenant Chen Wei from Tactical, Xanthari Processing Center. Kepler 442 system. Intelligence indicates 3,000 human captives currently held there. Park nodded. Not just humans. According to our sources, they're holding members of at least 6 other species. We free them all. This was humanity's strategy, born from both desperation and principle. They couldn't defeat the Xanthari Empire. In direct confrontation, the enemy had 300 worlds and thousands of ships. But they could strike at the foundation of that empire. The slave systems that kept it running. The human fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. The Xanthari Processing Center orbited a barren moon, a massive facility where newly captured species were cataloged, branded, and shipped to labor markets across the empire. Xanthari defense platforms are charging weapons, Chen Wei reported. 8 patrol ships moving to intercept. Open a channel to all ships, Park ordered. Remember the plan. Fast, brutal, and gone, before their reinforcements arrive. We're not here to win a battle. We're here to send a message. The human fleet accelerated toward the processing center with reckless speed. Xanthari commanders, accustomed to cautious, calculated engagements, were caught off guard by the aggression. Human ships didn't slow for defensive fire. They flew straight through it. shields flaring, armor ablating, pressing forward at any cost. The Times, indomitable Times, took hits from 3 defense platforms but kept moving. Park gripped her chair as the ship shuddered. Return fire. All weapons, plasma cannons, railguns, and missile batteries unleashed hell on the Zenthari defenses. The human weapons were crude compared to proper Zenthari military hardware, but they were effective enough at close range. One defense platform exploded, then another. The retrofitted cargo ships, too slow and poorly armed to fight, served a different purpose. They landed directly on the processing center's docking bays, breaching the hulls and deploying boarding teams. Captain Sofia Reyes led the assault on Detention Block 7. Her team of Marines moved through the corridors with brutal efficiency, tactics learned from 2 years of tunnel fighting on Earth. The Zenthari guards, used to controlling frightened prisoners, weren't prepared for trained soldiers attacking with stolen plasma rifles. "Contact left!" someone shouted. Sophia fired without thinking, the alien weapon bucking in her hands. The Zenthari guard collapsed. They reached the holding cells within minutes. Behind energy barriers, thousands of beings from across the galaxy huddled in fear. Sophia saw humans, but also creatures she had no names for. 6-legged beings with crystalline skin, floating entities that seemed to be made of light. Massive furry creatures with multiple eyes. "Get those barriers down," Sophia ordered. Her team's engineer worked frantically on the control panel, using codes provided by anonymous sources from within Zenthari space. The barriers flickered and died. For a moment, nobody moved. The prisoners stared at their rescuers in disbelief. Then a human voice called out from the back. "Are you from Earth?" "Yes," Sophia answered. "And we're getting all of you out of here." The evacuation was chaotic. Thousands of freed prisoners poured through the corridors toward the human ships. Zenthari reinforcements were arriving. The fleet had maybe 10 minutes before they'd be overwhelmed. "All ships, begin withdrawal," Admiral Park ordered. "Get those people aboard and jump to the rally point." The human fleet limped away from Kepler 442. Hulls scarred and shields depleted, but their cargo bays were full of freed slaves. The strike had cost them 2 ships and 300 lives, but they had rescued nearly 4,000 beings, and they had proven something important. The freed aliens arrived at humanity's hidden shipyard, a hollowed-out asteroid in an uncharted system. Dr. James Okonkwo met them personally, along with translators and medical staff. A crystalline being approached him, communicating through a translation device. "You came for us. We are not your species." "Why?" James looked at the being for a long moment. "Because nobody came for us. When the Zenthari took our people, the galaxy watched and did nothing. We won't do nothing." Word of the rescue spread across Zenthari space faster than light. On worlds where enslaved species labored in mines and factories, whispers began. Earth had struck back. The humans were freeing slaves. More encrypted messages arrived at human command. Former scientists, engineers, and military officers from conquered species offered their knowledge. Star charts appeared showing every slave processing center in Zenthari space. Detailed schematics of Zenthari warships were transmitted anonymously. The Hevari, a species enslaved for 800 years, sent a delegation to meet with human leadership. Their spokesperson, an elderly being named Thexal, addressed Admiral Park directly. "For 8 centuries, my people have been slaves," Thexal said through a translator. "We attempted rebellion twice. Both times, the Zenthari crushed us. We gave up hope. Then we heard about Earth, a primitive world that refused to submit, that fought back with stolen weapons and determination. You've given us something we lost long ago." "What's that?" Park asked. "Hope. And we wish to join your cause. Our people still remember our shipbuilding techniques. Our scientists know weaknesses in Zenthari systems. Let us fight alongside you." Within months, the human resistance transformed into something larger. The Hevari brought their knowledge of advanced manufacturing. The Vorin, another freed species, contributed their expertise in energy systems. The crystalline Krell offered their understanding of faster-than-light communications. Earth's shipyards expanded rapidly. The fleet grew from 15 warships to 50, then to 100. Each ship incorporated technology from multiple species, a fusion of different civilizations united against a common enemy. The Zenthari High Council convened an emergency session. Fleet Commander Calvex presented his report. With barely concealed frustration, the humans have ignited a galactic uprising, he explained. 17 of our processing centers have been destroyed. Slave rebellions have erupted on 43 worlds. Species we conquered centuries ago are suddenly producing weapons again. The Empire is destabilizing. High Counselor Vethris slammed a fist on the table. This is unacceptable. They are one species. How can one primitive world threaten an empire of 300? Because they're not alone anymore, Calvex answered. Every species we've enslaved is watching them, and they're asking themselves, if humans can resist, why can't we? The Zenthari assembled a massive fleet, 500 warships, the largest military force they had deployed in centuries. They would travel to Earth's system and end this rebellion once and for all. Total extermination. The humans would be made an example, but intelligence of the fleet's assembly reached human command through their network of informants. Admiral Park reviewed the numbers with her senior staff. 500 ships. They had 130. We can't win that fight, one of her captains said quietly. No. Park agreed. We can't. Not in a direct battle. She looked at the star charts on the display, showing the Zenthari fleet's projected route to Earth. But we don't have to. They want to end this at Earth. We'll end it at Zenthar Prime. The room fell silent. Zenthar Prime. The Zenthari homeworld. Heart of their empire. Defended by 300 orbital platforms and countless defense fleets. They're sending their fleet to us, Park continued. Which means their core systems will be vulnerable. We strike at their homeworld while they're heading to ours. We force them to choose between conquering Earth and defending their own people. It was insane. Suicidal. A desperate gamble that violated every principle of military strategy. It was also exactly the kind of plan that had kept humanity alive for 2 years. Send word to all our allies, Park ordered. We're taking the war to Zenthar Prime. Anyone who wants revenge against the Zenthari Empire, now's your chance. The response was overwhelming. Species that had been slaves for centuries rallied to join the assault. The Hevari committed their entire rebuilt fleet. The Vorin sent every ship they could muster. The Krell, whose crystalline vessels moved through space in ways that defied physics, volunteered to lead the assault. 200 ships from a dozen species. Against the most heavily defended world in the galaxy, the gamble was set. Earth's fate, and the fate of every enslaved species in the galaxy, would be decided in a single, desperate strike. Number: The Reckoning. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session on the neutral station of Haven's Rest. Representatives from 43 civilizations gathered, none of them involved in the Earth-Zenthari War, but all concerned about the escalating violence. Ambassador Talora of the Vescan Confederation addressed the assembly. We must intervene. The conflict has gone beyond a simple territorial dispute. Entire worlds are burning. End one. End one. The Zenthari have deployed weapons that violate a dozen interstellar treaties. And the humans, she paused, choosing her words carefully. The humans fight with a brutality we haven't seen in civilized space for millennia. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The council had tried to ignore the war, hoping it would resolve itself. But the conflict was spreading. Trade routes were disrupted. Neutral systems found themselves hosting refugee populations. The stability of the entire galactic sector was at risk. We must broker a peace, declared Ambassador Kethron of the Marana Unity. Both sides must be brought to the negotiation table before this spreads further. The Council voted unanimously to send peace delegations to both Earth and Zenthar Prime. They would offer mediation, resources, whatever it took to end the bloodshed. They were civilized species. Surely reason could prevail. The peace delegation arrived at Earth's hidden command station in an unarmed diplomatic vessel. Admiral Park Minji met them personally, along with representatives from the Hivari, Vorin, and Krell. The human admiral looked tired, her face lined with the weight of 2 years of constant warfare. Ambassador Talora presented the Council's proposal. We understand the grievances on both sides. The Zenthari violated your sovereignty, and humanity responded in self-defense. But the war has escalated beyond any reasonable response. We're prepared to guarantee Earth's independence, secure the return of all human captives, and provide economic sanctions against the Zenthari Empire. All we ask is that you cease offensive operations and come to the negotiation table. Park listened without expression. When Talora finished, the human admiral stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the construction yards where dozens of ships were being built. Do you know how many humans died in the first Zenthari bombardment? Park asked quietly. 50 million. Dead in a single day. Do you know how many have been taken as slaves? 8 million. Working in mines, factories, suffering conditions you couldn't imagine. We understand, Talora began. No, you don't. Park turned to face the delegation. You want to know why? Because you watched it happen. The Zenthari have been enslaving species for 5,000 years, 300 worlds, billions of beings in chains. And what did the Galactic Council do? Nothing. You traded with them. You recognized their sovereignty. You attended their diplomatic functions. The representatives shifted uncomfortably. Park's words were harsh, but they couldn't deny the truth. The Hivari were enslaved 800 years ago, Park continued, gesturing to the Hivari representative. Did the Council intervene? The Vorin 600 years? The Krell 900 years? Where was galactic justice then? Ambassador Kethron spoke up. The Council has always operated on principles of non-interference. We cannot dictate the internal policies of sovereign nations. Slavery isn't an internal policy, Park shot back. It's a crime. But you turned a blind eye because it was easier than taking a stand. Now you're upset because we're disrupting your comfortable trade networks and forcing you to notice. Thexal, the elderly Hivari representative, spoke through a translator. You call this a war between Earth and the Zenthari. But it's not. It's a war between freedom and slavery. And every day you remain neutral. You choose slavery's side. The delegation tried for 3 days to convince humanity to negotiate. They offered economic incentives, technological exchanges, guaranteed security. Park listened to every proposal politely, then refused them all. The Zenthari can have peace whenever they want, Park said. Total disarmament. War crime tribunals for every commander involved in Earth's invasion. Reparations to every species they've enslaved, and complete dismantling of their slave systems. Those are our terms. Those terms would effectively end their civilization, Talora protested. They tried to end ours, Park replied. The difference is, we're giving them a choice. The delegation departed for Zenthar Prime, hoping to find more reasonable voices there. What they found was defiance. High Counselor Vethries received them in the Grand Council Chamber, a vast hall decorated with treasures from 300 conquered worlds. He listened to their proposal with barely concealed contempt. You want us to negotiate with slaves? Vethries laughed. The humans are property. They just haven't accepted it yet. We will crush their rebellion and teach the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Zenthari dominion. The humans have proven they cannot be easily crushed, Ambassador Talora pointed out. They've destroyed your processing centers, freed your slaves, and inspired rebellions across your territory. Perhaps it's time to seek a peaceful resolution. Vethries stood, his massive form towering over the delegation. "We have assembled a fleet of 500 warships. In 2 weeks, we will travel to Earth's system and burn their primitive world to ash. After that, we will hunt down every human in the galaxy and return them to chains. This rebellion ends with total Zenthari victory. There will be no negotiation." The delegation returned to the Galactic Council with their report. Both sides refused to compromise. Humanity demanded the impossible, and the Zenthari refused to yield anything. War to the finish seemed inevitable. "Then we must consider containment," Ambassador Kethron suggested. "Blockade both systems. Prevent the conflict from spreading further." But before the Council could vote, new intelligence arrived. The human fleet was moving not toward defensive positions around Earth, but toward Zenthar Prime itself. And the massive Zenthari fleet was heading to Earth. The two forces were about to pass each other in the void. "They're swapping targets," Talora realized in horror. "The humans are attacking the Zenthari homeworld, while the Zenthari fleet attacks Earth." The Council erupted in chaos. This was madness. This was mutual destruction. Both capitals would fall. Both civilizations would suffer catastrophic casualties. "We must stop this," Kethron shouted over the noise. "Send every ship we have. Blockade both systems." But it was already too late. The fleets had jumped to FTL. The final battles were hours away. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Times. Indomitable Asterisk, leading the combined fleet towards Zenthar Prime. Around her, 200 ships from multiple species, prepared for the battle of their lives. They all knew the odds. Zenthar Prime was the most heavily defended world in known space. Many of them would not survive. "Final status check," Park ordered. Captain Sophia Reyes reported from the Times, Defiance Asterisk. "All weapons hot, shields at maximum. We're ready." One by one, the other ship captains reported in. Hevery, Vorin, Krell, and dozens of freed humans who had learned to pilot alien vessels, all ready to fight. "I won't lie to you," Park addressed the fleet over an open channel. "This is going to be hell. We're attacking the heart of an empire that has ruled for 5,000 years. They have more ships, better weapons, stronger defenses. By every tactical analysis, we should lose." She paused, letting that sink in. "But we have something they don't. We remember what it's like to be slaves. We remember what it's like to be afraid. And we've decided we're never going back. Whatever happens today, we fight for every species that's ever been chained. We fight so that no other world suffers what we suffered. We fight for freedom." The fleet emerged from FTL at the edge of the Zenthar system. Before them lay the Zenthari homeworld, jewel of their empire, orbited by 300 defense platforms and defended by 200 warships that had remained on station. "All ships," Park ordered. "Attack formation. Let's show them what free people can do." The fleet accelerated toward the waiting Zenthari forces. Behind them, light years away, the Zenthari armada was arriving at Earth's system, expecting to find a defenseless world. Instead, they would find a trap. Earth scientists had spent 2 years preparing for this moment, using knowledge from their freed allies. The entire solar system had been turned into a weapon. Both battles began simultaneously. The fate of 2 civilizations, and the future of freedom in the galaxy, would be decided in the next few hours. The reckoning had come. Number, the answer. The Zenthari armada emerged from FTL, expecting to find Earth helpless, its defenders drawn away to attack Zenthar Prime. Fleet Commander Calvex reviewed the tactical display and smiled. 500 warships against whatever pathetic defenses the humans had left. This would be over quickly. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. "Reduce every city to ash." Let this be a lesson too. The alarm screamed before he could finish. Gravity wells activated throughout the solar system. Massive generators hidden on moons, asteroids, and deep space platforms. The Zenthari fleet found itself pulled out of formation, ships dragged into carefully prepared kill zones. It was a trick the humans had learned from studying Zenthari collection technology and turned it into a weapon. "They've mined the entire system," his tactical officer shouted, detecting thousands of automated weapons platforms, nuclear mines, railgun satellites. "Sir, this whole system is a trap." The first detonations lit up the void. Zenthari ships, pulled into clusters by the gravity wells, found themselves in the middle of nuclear minefields. Shields flared and failed under sustained bombardment. Railgun platforms, too small to target individually, swarmed larger vessels like insects. Commander Calvex realized the horrible truth. The humans hadn't left Earth defenseless. They had spent 2 years preparing for this exact scenario. Every resource they couldn't spare for their offensive fleet had gone into turning their home system into a meat grinder. "Break formation. Get us clear of the gravity wells," Calvex ordered. But the Zenthari ships couldn't maneuver effectively in the artificial gravity fields. Human strike craft, piloted by volunteers who had trained for this single mission, launched from hidden bases throughout the system. They flew suicide runs into Zenthari command ships, their small size allowing them to slip through defensive fire. The battle for Earth became a brutal slugfest. The Zenthari had numbers and firepower, but the humans had turned their home territory into a weapon. Every approach vector was covered by overlapping fire. Every advantage the Zenthari tried to press led them into another trap. Light years away, the battle for Zenthar Prime raged with equal intensity. Admiral Park's fleet crashed into the Zenthari defensive perimeter like a hammer. The defense platforms opened fire immediately, energy beams and missiles filling space with deadly light. Human ships took hits, shields collapsing, hulls breaching. The Times, Defiance Times, lost its port engine in the first minute. 3 heavy ships exploded in the opening salvo. "Push through," Park ordered. "Don't slow down." The fleet adopted the same reckless tactics that had defined humanity's war from the beginning. Ships too damaged to fight rammed defense platforms. Crippled vessels set themselves on collision courses with Zenthari warships. The crystalline Krell ships, capable of rapid direction changes that would pulverize organic crews, wove through the defensive fire like dancers. Captain Sophia Reyes fought to keep the Times Defiance Times flying as explosions rocked the ship. "Engineering. I need that engine back online." "Negative, Captain. We're venting atmosphere on 3 decks. Weapons are operating at 40%. We can't." "I don't care about can't," Sophia shouted. "Find me something that still works and point it at a Zenthari ship." The battle descended into chaos. The tactical displays couldn't keep up with the speed and violence of the engagement. Ships from multiple species fought in coordination born from 2 years of shared combat. Heavy vessels provided covering fire for human strike craft. Vorin ships used their superior sensors to designate targets. The freed slaves of the galaxy fought with the desperation of people who had nothing left to lose. Admiral Park watched as the Times' indomitable Times took hit after hit. Her shields were down to 20%. Life support was failing on 4 decks. But they were getting through. The defense platforms were falling one by one. "We're in weapons range of the surface," Lieutenant Chenwei reported, targeting Zenthari military command centers. This was the moment that would define everything. Park had the power to destroy Zenthar Prime completely, to render it as lifeless as the Zenthari had tried to render Earth. She could end their entire civilization in an act of revenge. "Target military installations only," Park ordered. "Command centers, weapons, factories, shipyards. Nothing else." Chenwei looked at her in surprise. "Admiral, we could end them. After everything they've done. After everything they've done." "We choose to be better," Park said firmly. "We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to end an empire built on slavery. Fire on military targets only." The human fleet began systematic bombardment of Zenthar Prime's military infrastructure. Zenthari ground forces scrambled to respond. But they had never expected to defend their homeworld. Their entire military doctrine was built around projecting power outward, not protecting their core systems. The orbital platforms fought desperately, but they were designed to repel conventional fleets using cautious tactics. Against an enemy willing to trade ship for ship, take devastating casualties, and press forward no matter the cost. They were unprepared. One by one, the platforms fell silent. On Earth, Commander Calvex watched his fleet being systematically destroyed. They had lost over 100 ships in the opening hour. The humans' defensive network was more sophisticated than anything they had anticipated. And now his sensors detected something worse: human reinforcements arriving from hidden bases throughout the solar system. "Sir." Receiving a transmission from Zenthar Prime, his communications officer reported, "The homeworld is under attack. They're requesting immediate fleet withdrawal." "In why?" Calvex stared at the tactical display in numb horror. The humans had outmaneuvered them completely. They had sacrificed their own defensive fleet to draw the Zenthari armada away from their homeworld, leaving their own planet seemingly vulnerable while actually preparing an elaborate trap. And now both sides were fighting desperate battles simultaneously. "Order fleet withdrawal," Calvex said quietly. "Set course for Zenthar Prime." "Sir, if we leave now, the humans will." "The humans have already won," Calvex shouted. "They've been winning since the moment we underestimated them. Withdraw now, or we'll lose everything." The Zenthari fleet began its retreat from Earth's system, leaving behind the wreckage of nearly 200 warships. They jumped to FTL, racing back to defend their homeworld, knowing they were already too late. The battle for Zenthar Prime raged for another 6 hours. By the end, the Zenthari defensive fleet was destroyed. Every orbital platform was rubble, and the military-industrial complex that had sustained 5,000 years of conquest lay in ruins. The human-led fleet was barely functional. Only 70 of the original 200 ships remained operational. But they had won. Admiral Park stood on the ruined bridge of the Time's indomitable asterisk, looking at the planet below. Zenthar Prime still existed. Its cities still stood. The billions of Zenthari civilians were alive. Humanity could have destroyed them all. Instead, they had chosen restraint. The Zenthari government surrendered 3 days later. The terms were everything humanity had demanded: complete disarmament, war crime tribunals, reparations to freed species, and total dismantling of the slave systems. 2 weeks after the battle, the Galactic Council convened again. This time, Admiral Park Minji attended in person. The representatives stared at her with a mixture of fear, respect, and uncertainty. Ambassador Talora spoke first. "The Council wishes to discuss Earth's role in the galactic community moving forward. Your military capabilities have been extensively demonstrated. Many members are concerned about humanity's intentions." Park looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Species that had watched the Zenthari enslave others for millennia. Species that had done nothing. "You want to know what kind of civilization humanity will be," Park said. "Whether we'll become conquerors like the Zenthari. Whether we're a threat." She pulled up holographic data on the chamber's central display. "This is what humanity did in 2 years of total war. We went from atmospheric flight to FTL capability. We reverse-engineered alien technology that should have taken us decades to understand. We built a fleet from salvage and determination. We united a divided world against a common enemy." The display shifted to show images of freed slaves. "And we freed every enslaved being we found. Not just humans. Everyone. We could have focused solely on rescuing our own people. But we didn't. Because we believe freedom isn't just for humanity. It's for everyone." She paused, letting that sink in. "You're afraid of us. I understand that. We fought with a brutality that shocked the galaxy. We used tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare. We were willing to sacrifice everything to win. But here's what you need to understand. We didn't want this war. We wanted to be left alone. The Zenthari came to us. They tried to enslave us. And we refused. Park's voice hardened. For 5,000 years, you watched the Zenthari build an empire on the backs of slaves. You traded with them. You normalized their atrocities. You did nothing. And when one species finally fought back, you rushed to broker peace and restore the comfortable status quo. The Council operates on principles of non-interference, Ambassador Kethron began. Then let me make humanity's principles clear, Park interrupted. We will not interfere with sovereign civilizations. We will not seek to conquer or dominate, but we will never, ever stand by and watch slavery happen again. Any species, any world that tries to enslave others will face Earth's response. That's our answer to your question about what kind of civilization we are. The chamber fell silent. We're establishing the Terran Protection Fleet, Park continued. Any species facing enslavement can request our protection. We'll help them defend themselves. We'll provide technology, training, ships if needed. We're not building an empire. We're building a network of free worlds that will never again bow to slavers. She looked directly at the Council representatives. You can join us, oppose us, or stay out of our way. But the age of empires built on chains is over. Humanity has given the galaxy that answer. Ambassador Talora stood slowly. And if the Council opposes this protection fleet, if we view it as an armed threat to galactic stability, Park met her eyes steadily. Then you'll learn what the Zenthari learned. We're the kind of species that went from pre-FTL to defeating a galactic empire in 2 years. We're the kind who survived total war and chose mercy when we could have chosen revenge. We're the kind who freed every slave we found, even when it cost us dearly. She turned to leave, then looked back one last time. We're the kind who finish what others start. The Zenthari wanted to enslave humanity. We answered with a wrath that ended their civilization, but we're also the kind who offer a hand to those who need it. You get to choose which humanity you meet. Choose wisely. Admiral Park left the council chamber. Behind her, representatives from 43 civilizations sat in stunned silence, realizing that the galaxy had changed forever. A new power had emerged, born from fire and suffering, carrying both terrible strength and unexpected compassion. Earth had given its answer to the galaxy's oldest crime. And the echo of that answer would shape civilizations for millennia to come. The war was over. But humanity's role in the galaxy had just begun.